Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome to a bonus honest review, and it's one I've been looking forward to for a long time. Very rarely in cinema do we get the opportunity of digging up movies once considered lost and display them to the world for the first time, but it's exactly the case with the Amusement Park. The Amusement Park is the long-lost film of the late George A. Romero, who famously changed the landscape of the zombie genre as we know it. But even though Romero is primarily known as the father of the zombie film, perhaps his most chilling piece in his career is a film that challenges an area of horror that all of us will likely face, or are already facing: growing old. Back in 1973, the Lutheran Society, one of the largest branches of Protestantism, directly approached Romero and commissioned him to make an educational film about ageism and the abuse of the elderly. However, what Romero created was something so disturbing that the Lutheran Society refused to release it. It got shelved and was considered to be lost. Thankfully, in 2017, a copy of the film was discovered, but sadly 2017 was also the year Romero passed away at the age of 77. However, the show must go on. Since its premiere screening in 2019, it's taken a little while, but finally horror streaming service Shudder have picked up the rights to stream the film, and that's where I come in, to give an honest review of a movie lost for nearly half a century. As always, there's going to be some spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. But hold on, you're about to get a second warning as the film opens up with a direct address to the audience by the main actor, Lincoln Marzel. He discusses the themes of the film that you're about to witness, that many people in the film were volunteers, and that for the elderly members of cast, this was one of the most fun experiences they had in recent years. This is because all too often the elderly are considered to be defunct components, even though they should be relishing in their wisdom and their life's earnings. Instead, they're spare parts without purpose or use, and that is something that can only be changed by people and how we approach and handle the elderly. We are asked to remind ourselves that one day we will be old, and that after the film we should reflect on what we've seen. So let's get to it. The opening shot is already eerie, as Marzel, now in character as an old neglected man, sits with bloody cuts and bandages on his face, sitting in an all-white room with nobody around him, already hinting at the isolation and loneliness often experienced in old age. Another version of Marzel enters the room, who is a lot happier, and although wearing the same outfit, is a lot cleaner and well kept. The bloody version tells him there's nothing outside worth seeking, but the clean version goes out anyway. The man has entered the amusement park. People of all ages are in the park, but we mainly focus on the elderly, in wheelchairs or using crutches, being shown as weak or needing assistance, or are ignored by the younger people around them. We start getting the hint that the amusement park isn't all that it seems, and is more of a metaphor than a real location. That's because Marzel looks at the requirements to get onto a certain ride, which are to have over $3,500 of individual income and to not suffer from a bunch of age-related health issues. Effectively, there are certain rides and attractions in the park that are only accessible if you have certain traits, and in general, elderly people don't have those traits, therefore they can't get on the rides. This is very symbolic of how the elderly can often be left out of certain opportunities because of their age or the state of their well-being. Despite many people being unable to board these allegorical rides, Marzel can get on board some of them, but even though he's got access to certain parts of the park, he witnesses people being tested for their eligibility, such as the scene where an elderly man has his eyes tested but fails and is taken away some of his rights and access. What's notable is that everyone who performs these tests, as well as the ride operators, are all young to middle-aged adults, not elderly, and so the elderly are having their rights removed by those younger than them, truly harkening back to the main concept of the film. The way Romero has shot the movie is in a way where people constantly walk in front of the camera during shots, and to transition into the next shot, there's always a sense of claustrophobia, like you don't have any room to move or breathe. It really does make it a disorientating experience. Marzel is treated very differently for being old, such as times where his lack of money means that waiters give him a poor service, or when at a grocery store he doesn't receive any help carrying his goods. He's instead ignored and left to fend for himself, as many elderly people are. Then we get one of the genuinely saddest parts of the film, at least symbolically. Marzel has a jar of what looks like peanut butter and he wants to share it with some of the kids, but a guy spots him offering a treat to the children and he's outed as a degenerate. What a horrendous day and age we live in. Sadly, paedophilia is a curse on humanity and may never truly be killed off, but there are so many kind-hearted people in the world of all ages who get great happiness happiness in giving a gift to children or making them smile in some way. It's a small percentage of wrongdoers who've poisoned the fountain of youth. The old are at the end of their life cycle, children are at the beginning. It's the nature of humanity, and by providing some element of joy to the young, the old gain joy in return. But it comes at the cost of being automatically suspicious to the society around you. One of the film's most disturbing sequences comes when a young couple visit a fortune teller and ask to see their future. We see them in a broken building which the owner can't afford to repair due to the sheer financial cost. But the editing is so trippy and weird here. This segment entranced me with an empowering nervousness that took a while to shake off, the sheer brutality of neglect being presented loud and clear here. Back with Marcel now, and the park suddenly empties, the once overcrowded landscape now replaced with nothing but a striking clock on the ground. A Reaper-like figure strolls across the park as three bikers approach Marcel. Collectively, could they be the Four Horsemen? The editing here again is brutally off-putting. The bikers go from circling around Marcel to immediately stopping in place and then moving towards him in stop motion before beating him. They steal his tickets and leave before the park becomes full again. Now Marcel is the helpless bloody wreck that we first saw at the start of the film. People steal from his pockets, taking everything he has. His last hope comes in the form of a little girl who this time calls him over to read a book. A pure innocent smile with a kind heart, who is the only person to have noticed Marcel in a caring way. He has pure delight at being able to read her a story, but then the mother packs up, takes the girls and the book, and almost immediately that sense of being wanted is literally ripped from his hands. He leaves the park into the white room again, like the start. The clean Marcel enters the room yet again, and here we are presented with a cycle that is going to be experienced by all elderly people, unless we do something to break the chain and prevent our olds from being walked over and unnecessarily abused. Marcel delivers a closing speech summarising the film, that there are many programs where people can volunteer to help the elderly, and that we don't have to grow old and head back to the white room beaten down and scarred. Instead, we must be a positive influence while we are young enough to have an influence, and shape the world for the better as soon as we can. Despite the age of the film, its messages are crystal clear and are still very much applicable today, because it's a subject matter that will never become obsolete. We need to remember that the old are not distant and unconnected to our world, rather they've experienced more of our world than we have, and we must recognise them, respect them, and care for them wherever possible. Just like the cycle of life, the cycle of love is both given and received by people of all ages. Yes, the messages here could have been presented in a far less horrific way, and I don't blame the Lutheran Society for rejecting the film initially because of its nauseating score and editing, mind-boggling transitions and shot framing, disturbing subject matter, and upsetting scenes. But Marcel does an excellent job as both a narrator to bookend the film, as well as being the focal character in the film itself. I'm delighted that this film has finally been found, and I highly recommend it. It may be Romero's most meaningful work of his career. It's a time capsule that we are very lucky to be finally seeing many years after Romero's death, but one thing for certain is that Romero is truly an icon of cinema.